Hello, welcome to Missy's Imaginings. I hope you are well. Right now we are in the middle, excuse me, my voice is still a little scary. We are in the middle of the theme park bounding series, and so far we have cut out all the pieces for both the Frozen or Frosty or Snow Queen set. So we have all the pieces cut out and ready to sew. We have some more items here. We have some more items here. And we also have the items for Snow White all cut out. So if you'd like to see those pieces, that was in one of the previous videos. In the last video, we sewed the actual snowy, frosty, lacy top that we got that done. It's just a straight, oversized t-shirt. And this pattern was made to fit the Angel Studio Hua Rong, who has a fuller overall figure. She's about 60 to 61 centimeters tall with high-heeled feet. So this top with this size of an opening, because it's not stretchy at all, this top is able to go on the doll without removing the head, either over the head and shoulders or sliding the legs in and going up over the hips. Either way, this top can go on the doll with this size of opening. So if you're dealing with fabric that's not stretchy, then this size of an opening, along with the actual neck opening, so we're looking at about 4 inches, gives a wide enough opening to be able to get onto the doll. So that was in the last video. Then we also sewed the little capri pants, and this is done by using the pant pattern pieces without attaching the bottom part of the leg, just using the part that would fit on the one page. Gives a capri length. I did add the fabric for a fly because it does not have that, so you can either add that little rectangle to the edge of the front pieces that would be like the crotch line, if you want to add that fly, or there's other patterns on the website that have a fly already in. This pattern is made to have like an elastic waist, or once you get like the crotch line and the side seams and the inseam all sewn, you can put it on the doll and fit it, which is what I did, and then decide where you might want pleats for the front or darts for the back to fit your individual doll. And so that's what I did on these rather than an elastic waist. We've also sewn 2 of the backpacks. So we did the backpack for the Frozen Frosty Snow Queen set. So here's the straps. Then we've got front pockets, and then inside we have some soda and what else? I think it was a water bottle. There we go. A water bottle. So if you're looking for these little prop type items, this is actually a lip balm, and there we go. But it makes a cute SD size soda. And then we have the water bottle. Came in a set for, I believe it's the My Life 18-inch doll set that you can get at Walmart. They have wonderful little props and accessories for 18-inch dolls, and so those props and accessories are a good size for 3rd scale BJDs as well. So that, oh, and then there's a drawstring that this can pull if you want, and then the bead can slide up. Ideally it would hold it, but it's not a very tight bead, so it would come loose. But anyway, in theory. Oh, and this is just a hair clip. Okay, so that's the Snow Queen set. Oh, and there's some top stitching here. Then I also did the backpack for Snow White, which is just the same pattern. However, on this one, rather than fold over the side pocket, which ended up being really, really small, I went ahead and cut an additional piece and put like a little pleat in the bottom, so it actually gives a little bit more room for the pocket on the side edge. So you can adjust that however you want. And I would recommend for the backpacks that you make the straps longer, because I could get it on the doll, but it was very snug and kind of difficult. So make longer straps, and there we go. So there's our two little backpacks. Today, I want to go ahead and sew up the lace leggings. So it's just a pretty little white lace fabric, not expensive, just simple. And then also the little shorts. Now on this, because of the shape of my fabric, it was just a remnant I had, and the piece in and of itself would not fit onto the fabric because of the weird shape that it was. So what I did is I took this edge and got as close to the edge of the fabric as I could, which cut off some of this, like the crotch line that would have more fabric over here, and then I just added over here because the piece of fabric like cut down real narrow, and so then I just added some on this edge because I couldn't move it over or it would have cut off the top. So I kind of had to finagle. So normally if you use the shorts piece, it's going to have more length over here and less over here. So I just compensated my pattern to put it on this side, so it looks a little weird. The shorts and the leggings, we're going to use a different method than we normally use with the pants, and just another way that you can sew them, just kind of show some sewing versatility for you. And then it's also very simple, so we'll be doing that. The other thing I want to definitely get to today is the hoodie. So this hoodie pattern, I actually changed the neckline so that it could have a front opening rather than an over the head hoodie, just because I wanted this one to be a little more like a jacket. So to do that, all I had to do was, normally these would be the back pieces, because the back has an opening, and then the hoodie would, which we'll do on Snow White. But I just went ahead and put what would normally be the back neckline on the full piece, and then the front lower neckline on the half pieces, so that it could open in the front instead. So if you want a front opening, that's all you have to do, is to change the line of the neckline to raise the one for the back pieces, lower the one for the front. And now we can sew this as a front opening hoodie. And I do believe somewhere on my, I'm going to jump up here to my board that's on the wall. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but I do have, there it is, a front opening zipper, not like a separating zipper is the word I want. So there we go, separating zipper for the front. So this will have a zipper opening rather than like snap closures. So we're going to put a zipper in, and then on this, the pattern has like a heart-shaped front pocket, and so I am going to use some of our snowflakey fabric to do the front pocket on the jacket, so you'll be able to see through the front pocket. So that means that this top part from about halfway across to here to like here will be the opening. So I'm going to have to hem that part of the edge, but then the other part will be actually what is sewn on, and we'll see how it ends up looking, because it is very curved, So it'll be a work in progress. But so once we get it done, then the pockets will kind of make the shape of a heart on the front. So anyway, so I'd like to get the hoodie done today and both pair of the shorts and leggings. We may go ahead and make an attempt to do the tiered skirt as well, just because it's pretty simple. It's a lot of straight line sewing. So even though these items have a lot of sewing, it's going to be pretty simplistic today, and hopefully we can get a total of 4 pieces sewn up in this video. So if that sounds good to you, we'll get everything organized and start sewing. The first item I want to work on is the little shorts. So we'll, first of all, we want to iron the fabric, because as you can tell, it's really wrinkly. There's a couple of different kinds of little irons you can use. Of course, you can use a regular normal iron. I have a little small iron, like a little craft iron, that I like just because it's less bulky, and I kind of have it to the side with a little ironing pad. I have also used one that looks like this, because it's very nice to have a very small ironing tip to reach into small places. However, I'm a little clumsy, and at one point I actually dropped this, and a word of warning, the rod on these irons actually gets hotter than the iron itself, and I dropped this on my arm, well, on my hand and wrist, and so now I don't know if it'll show up, but I do have a scar that kind of runs from here up to here, because it just, the whole thing fell on here. It was very, very hot, and instantly, you know, it was a problem. But I did use what's called Arnicare, and within like 30 minutes, this didn't even hurt anymore, and then it barely blistered and healed right up. So yes, it did scar, and so I have like a war wound, my dolly war wound. But yeah, so my cautionary tale on, if you're handling these irons, be very, very careful, because this exposed, I guess it's steel right here, gets a lot hotter even than the part that you're using to iron. And so you just want to be careful, because with the cord, there we go, my words are coming slow this morning. It's not really like this little piece swivels, but the cord itself doesn't swivel a lot, and so if you don't have it at the right angle, it tends to want to bend, and I think that's what happened. I was trying to turn it, and it didn't want to turn easily, and it flipped right out of my hand, and there we go. So be really careful on these types of irons, just because there's the added danger level here. So word of caution on that tail. But on the little ones, it handles more like a regular iron. You're gripping above the part that's actually the hot plate, and for me it just is a little bit easier, and I have less problems with that. So there you go, your public service announcement regarding irons. So on these little shorts, the first thing I'm going to do is take a look at the fabric, and I can't remember if I actually have a milled edge on the hem, which I do. So on these, since it's dolly clothes, and since this milled edge is nice and pretty, it doesn't have any of the perforations or discolorations, I'm not even going to hem these. You can have the option, and I need to back up. My brain is getting ahead of my words. So the pattern itself can be sewn as either shorts or like bloomers, because there's a lot of flare. There's a lot of opening around the leg, is kind of what I'm going to say. So they end up being a very flared short if you want them as shorts, or if you put the elastic in, that, you know, bunches this up and produces a little ruffle. And then you have the bloomers. But I'm going to make these just a nice flared wide leg short, because then these will be worn over leggings. And so that's just how I wanted to do this set. So yeah, so I'm not going to worry about hemming the bottom, and this pair will not have elastic in the legs. If you do want that elastic, what I usually do for elastic in the leg, I'm just going to grab some elastic I have laying here, is I take a piece of elastic and I make sure that it's hanging over the edge of the fabric. Here, we'll get this out of the way. Oh, so this is how I do it, rather than trying to put in a casing and thread the elastic through on a sleeve or a leg like this. I'll make sure I have about 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch on the length of the fabric, and then I'm going to hold that tight, and then I'm going to stretch my elastic and make sure that it goes the entire length of the fabric, and then mark it with my thumb, come back down, and then add another 3/8 or 1/4 inch. And this would be the piece of elastic length that I would use for this. So I measure my fabric and then cut my elastic. The reason I do this rather than measuring on the doll is if I were to put this on the doll and go around the leg with very little stretch, then cut it, I would end up with a piece that's about this long. But the problem comes in with this method that even if I stretch it, it's not long enough to go all the way across the fabric, because this is going to be sewn directly to the fabric. So I always measure against the fabric, not the doll, for this method. So once again, I get my extra, I stretch it out, find where that would be, then add extra, and then I cut. Then I have my little extra sticking out. I anchor this elastic in the machine to the fabric, and then I stretch the elastic as I hold on to the other edge and feed it through the machine, so then it sews to the fabric while it's stretched, and then when you let go, it gathers it up very, very evenly. Then, because I have a little bit extra on each edge, then my seam allowance is fine, and then I already have a pretty little gather that's evenly placed all around the leg or sleeve, whatever. So that's how I would do it if I was putting the elastic on. However, this garment will not have elastic. So I'm going to iron my pieces, not worry about the hem, not worry about the elastic. Then the first order of business for this method is I'm going to sew the inseam, and because I made that little adjustment, I'll just trim a little bit here so that my line matches. So I'm going to sew the inseam together, and then I'll serge that so that it's nice and finished. So I'm going to do that to both pieces. Then the part you want to be careful is that you sew them the opposite way, so that your right side of your fabric is correct on both pieces, because you don't want to have one leg correct and one leg inside out. So you just want to make sure that you're sewing them so that the outside of the fabric or the right side is together on both pieces. And when you have fabric that looks the same on both sides, then you just want to make sure that the pieces are, there we go, see how they're the opposite directions? That way I know that I have the same side as far as right side together. Now that the little leg seams are sewn, the way this method works is we take one of the legs and turn it right side out like so. There we go. And now we're going to slip the one that's right side out inside the one that's wrong side out. There we go. We're just going to layer them inside each other. Where's my edge? There it is. And so now, because I had them sewn opposite from one another, when I line up that inseam, make sure that's all lined up correctly. Now, the cut of the crotch seam will match. So here's the one that was a little bit straighter, and then we've got the one that has a little bit more of an extension that matches, and now we line that up. So the next thing to do is just to actually pin this crotch seam, and I have to turn the other way because I'm right-handed and that's just how my hands work. So we're going to line this up and grab some pins. There we go. Get it all matched. And come down here. Probably place a pin right here. And then of course one at the seam. And what I kind of like to do, and this is totally up to you, but when I'm doing this where the actual seam is, once I get it lined up, I like to go ahead and place the pin so that it's also pinning down that seam allowance, so that it kind of ensures the seam allowance is going to lay the same direction on both this piece as well as the other leg. So it just kind of holds my seam allowance in place. Then we continue. There we go. Line that up. Alrighty. And a pin there. Then we'll come up to this side. And there we go. Okay, so now that that's all pinned, now we're just going to put it into the machine and we're going to sew that seam. And I'll go ahead and leave this in real time just because there is a little bit of a flip that happens, but I just want to show that it's really not that difficult. We've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so we're going to sink our needle and do a quick backspace, or back tack, I'm sorry. There we go. All right, so we're going to come down, and this is what will be the back side, because the more of the curve will go on the side with the bum. So here we go. Come down and remove our pins. I also have just this cute little magnetic pin holder, which I do have my little tomato too. He's kind of busy with lots of little treasures that I use for sewing, but sometimes putting the pins in and out of the pumpkin isn't as quick, where I can just grab them out and throw them on this little magnet. Just makes it a little bit faster if that's something that interests you and you might want to try. So here we go. My machine used to just sew over pins with no problem, but then I started using dressmaker pins because they have more length, and so I think, I don't know, it just seemed to not like them as much as far as going over them. So to minimize the risk of breaking needles and kind of getting things in a mess, it's okay to remove your pins. So now we're coming down to the actual inseam, and we're just gently curving it. I'm going to pull that pin out. But as you can see, I haven't had any major adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and lift my foot and get a little bit of a turn here, just to keep this edge along this edge of my foot. So then I'm going to gently lift the foot, come back down, and then kind of gently lift, move around. And there you see I've gone around that corner, and it really hasn't been that difficult. My machine just keeps sewing like I'm sewing a straight line. There, we'll take that one out. Come up to the top and do some back tack to hold that in place. There we go. Pull it out. grab my scissors and trim away threads. And now that this is sewn, I'll trim a little bit, but more of it will be cut away when I actually serge this. But I'm going to take this seam now into the overlock or serger machine and do the exact same thing that I just did sewing. So I'll be right back. So here is the piece that has the crotch seam all sewn and serged. So now it's really simple to just flip it right side out and turn our legs there. And so now we have the shorts that are ready for the elastic in the waist, and that's all there is to it. They're done. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to press the seam, like the crotch seam, just so it'll lay a little bit nicer, and then we're going to go ahead and turn over like 1/4 of an inch and then another 3/8 of an inch to create a casing. And then I will thread the, well, when I sew it, I'll start like here and go around and then end here to leave an opening, and then through that opening I'll thread a 1/4 inch elastic that will go all the way around the waist, and yeah, then those will be done. But that's how simple it is to do the little shorts. There's no side seam because of the way that we sewed those, and so yeah, it's just real simple. On the leggings, I'm gonna do them the same way, but because the leggings actually have they're not, there's a curve for the outside of the hips, so I do the side seam first for, you know, front and back, put them together, but they're all the same shape, and that will create my two pieces that will then be used to follow this method. So that's all there is to doing the leggings and the shorts. Like I say, now it's just putting the casing in for the waist, and I'm going to leave these really flared because I want the leggings to come out from underneath them. So we'll get the leggings done with the very same steps and then do the little casing and get the elastic in, and yeah, I'll come back to the camera. Now the legs of the lacing though does not have a milled edge, so once I get the two pieces put together like a front and a back, I will hem that bottom edge of the legging, just hem it up so that there will be a hemmed edge. But yeah, that's the only difference, is the side and hemming it, and then I'll follow the exact same steps. So we'll get these two pieces all done and come back to the camera. Here are the little shorts, and I actually put my little tag in them. So here's just the little elastic waist shorts with a wider leg. So they're all done. And then the leggings, pretty much the same thing. I have a little tag here. And on the leggings, I just turned it over once because this isn't going to fray, and didn't add a lot of extra bulk on the inside seams, and just top stitch this seam down because it's not going to fray, so I didn't bother serging all of this. But so yeah, so there's the little leggings, they're hemmed on the bottom. So our next project will be starting to work on our hoodie. So what I'm going to do for our hoodie is, the first order of business is to get the front ready by putting the pockets on the front pieces. And so I will be finishing, probably just turning this over lightly. I may do the same way I hemmed on the shirt, so just a little line so that I have a way to roll that over, and then hem that edge from the top down to the edge of the where it will sew down. So I'll hem the part that will be open where the hands can go into the pockets. Then I'm going to tack it onto the front by sewing, usually I kind of flip this and kind of work it around so that it's ready to go like this, and then I'll turn this edge under and then sew it on, and then I will lastly baste it to the front edge because I want it to be secure so I can put in the zipper. So I'll get the pockets on the front, then with right sides together I will sew the shoulder seams together, and then on the hood I will sew the top and the back edge of the hood, and then I will sew this around to create kind of not just a hem but a wider hem, because this will be the casing for the drawstring for the hoodie. So I will sew that part, and then I'll come back and we'll look at our next steps. So here is the little snow, or the little snowflake heart half on this front piece. So I sewed along the edge and turned it under, and then just applique sewed it on. Then I sewed down the front center to adhere it to the fabric so it's easier when I need to turn it for the zipper. And then this edge was turned under and sewed on applique style. And then this is the edge that I actually hemmed. And here I just did a slight little turn over around that thread and hemmed it just to keep it in place. I didn't add any serging or finishing, so that would ravel if it gets a lot of activity. But because it's just the inside of a pocket, which will realistically just be decorative, I'm not going to worry about that. I have a couple little threads here that I'm going to trim a little bit, but there's the first pocket on one of the fronts. Here is the hood that is all finished, and once I got it put together, before I did the casing, I did top stitch the seam allowance down, which helps it to lay flat so that the hood has a little bit more of a rounded flat seam than to making it stay really pointed, I guess would be the word. So it just kind of helps flatten that out, since it is going to go around a head. It takes out a little bit less of the pointiness that can happen from just a seam. So I did that on the hood, then did the casing. So once it's put together, all you have to do is insert like a heavy needle with your cording of choice, and then just siphon it through there, and then have your drawstring. So that's ready to go. Here is the front of the hoodie. We have the pockets here on both sides attached. So there's the pocket, and then I also top stitched on the shoulders to flatten out that seam allowance as well and hold it in place. When I do hoodies, usually it's going to be of a knit fabric, which does not fray really bad, so I don't need to worry about a lot of extra serging on those seam allowances, which is nice. My next step is going to be to apply the cuffs to the hoodie, or the cuffs to the sleeves and the sleeves to the hoodie. So the cuff pieces, I'm simply going to fold with the right side out. Then I will anchor one end to the sleeve, and then the other end I'm going to pull to match the length of the end of the sleeve as I sew it on. And then when that kind of releases, then it'll be gathered to match this. There's not a lot of stretch to this fabric, so it'll take a little extra pull, but sometimes if there's a lot of stretch to the fabric, I'll actually cut the cuffs a little bit shorter, just to have more of a gather there at the sleeve cuffs. But this doesn't have a lot of stretch. It's knit, but it only stretches about that much. So I will put the cuffs on the sleeves, Then simply fold the sleeve, because these are not really rounded. So I'll fold the sleeve in half at the shoulder seam and put a little tiny snip there. Then that is the center of my shoulder, so I'm going to match that little notch up to the shoulder seam, and then just lay this down the side like so, and then just sew up to the shoulder, and then line it back up and sew back down, and that's all I need to do to attach the sleeves. Once the sleeves are on, I will go ahead and put in the zipper, baste the front together so that will, open nice and flat, and then put my zipper in, and then once the zipper is in, then I'll go ahead and remove the basting so that it will actually be a separating zipper. Because some of the difficulties on a separating zipper is making sure that the bottom edge is even, because that's where the zippers are going to connect. And because the separating zipper needs to match on the bottom so that the zipper can, open and close. Here, we'll pull it out. There we go. There we go. Then this top edge isn't as important. So we match where we want the bottom edge down here when we're putting it in. And then the top will just go however up however long we have fabric, and then that will actually be just cut off. And then I usually use a bead sewn on at the top teeth so that the zipper side that actually has the slider, it can't slide off because it goes up to the bead and stops. So with a separating zipper, you want to make sure that the bottom lines up correctly, because that's where it goes in and out to attach the zipper when you're going to zip the jacket up. So the zipper will be after I get the sleeves on, and then once I have the zipper in place, then I'll go ahead and sew the hoodie on just to kind of contain all my zipper end pieces and make sure I have a nice finished look on the outside with that zipper in place. So those are my next steps so far. I'll get the sleeves done and in, and then we'll kind of take a closer look at putting in the zipper. So the cuffs are done and the sleeves are attached, and I did top stitch along the shoulder but not along the cuff. Now I've also basted together the front, so what I will do is flip it this way to the wrong side of the fabric. I'll open the seam, then we'll take our zipper, and I'm going to have the zipper pull on the underneath side, and I'll decide where I want that to be placed, and then I'm going to sew on each side of the zipper to sew it down as close as possible to the zipper so that I'm catching that seam allowance. And this seam allowance I did more at like 3/8 of an inch rather than 1/4 of an inch, and there is enough overlap on the pieces to allow for that and still have it fit the doll. But then I will go ahead and sew from the bottom up on both sides of the zipper so that I can have the bottom part line up correctly with each side. So now we have the zipper sewn in. On the zipper, the bottom plastic part, and I'm not sure if this will show, but we'll try it, has 3 little holes that it was hard to see because it was white, but I tried to sink my needle in all 3 of those holes to get that anchored where I want it, and then I just sewed up to the end and then back tack, and then on the other side I went the opposite direction and did the same thing, and then just tied off my thread, because it will have some back tacking when I turn up the hem. There's going to be back tacking here that will also help hold that in place. So I didn't try to go overboard on the back tacking on this plastic, because that's a possibility to break your needle. And so I had to kind of hand feed into those tiny little holes. I'll kind of angle this at a couple different angles, and hopefully that will show up. But there are those little holes that I tried to match. So now the zipper is longer than my fabric. So I just sewed to the edge of my fabric. Now I will go ahead and put in the hood part. So with right sides together, I'm going to sew the hood onto the neckline. And then once that is all sewed on, then I will go ahead and trim away the excess zipper that I don't need. And then once it's all sewn on, I may top stitch around the neckline on the bodice part, not on the hoodie part, but on the bodice part, and that will also turn down that seam allowance. So it will kind of help anchor the zipper part down so that I don't have this kind of wonky stiff thing showing up. So it will look like this, and then I'll top stitch that down. So once the jacket is zipped up, we have a nice clean opening for the front of the jacket. So we'll go ahead and get the hood put on and get that little bit of finishing done around the neckline so that my zipper tie ending parts will be nice and finished. So here's where we are so far. The hood is now attached at the neckline, and I top stitched there. I went ahead and used a big like yarn needle to go ahead and just poke a hole to go in here through the casing, come out, and then come back out, and then put a couple little pretty beads on the end with some knots on my little drawstring. And the zipper is fully functional, so there we go. So the zipper's in, and this would separate, but I'm just not separating at the bottom. So now we're going to turn the hoodie inside out like so, and I will line up the sleeve, underarm, and the cuffs, and I'll start at the cuff, come to the underarm, and then come down. But because we have a curved edge here rather than just a straight edge, let me line that up. There we go. And the back is a little bit longer than the front, so I'm going to sew till I have about an inch from where the curve is kind of starting. I'm going to sew to here and back tack, and then this seam would open up, and then I will go ahead and hem the bottom of the jacket all around, but it will have like part of this will be kind of open and loose on the sides. So I'll go ahead and do the sleeves down to the bottom and then hem it, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at our finished little hoodie. So here is the end result. Our little hoodie is now done. So there's the inside of the hood with that seam allowance, and there we go. And then the sleeves look like this, and it's all hemmed. So we have the leggings done, dun, dun, dun. We have the little hoodie done, and the shorts. So our next course of action will be the little, let me grab them here, our little tiered skirt. So for this little skirt, we're going to have the actual sides of the skirt here, and then these are going to be the back pieces. So if I can get those, there we go. So I'm going to just do this the simplest way. First, I'm going to sew the side seams and I'll serge them. Then I'm going to do a layer of ruffle. It'll be this one is the next one, I believe. So then this piece will be gathered to fit this layer. Then this layer will be gathered to fit this one. So that will be have extra ruffle on it to fit the bottom. And then I'll probably just sew up straight up the back and then I'll go ahead and put the waistband on. So it's going to be a pretty simple skirt, but we'll go ahead and start our seams, and they're all going to pretty much going to be straight seams, and then attaching a gathered piece to it. So first we'll do the ironing, and then we'll go ahead and start assembling those pieces. And here are the finished little outfits. I didn't show sewing this shirt or the little white pants that are like the capri, that are the ones with like the sparkles in them, just because I have lots of videos on sewing pants like this. And the only difference between sewing these little pants for the girls as opposed to the fellas is the closure is on the opposite side. But I think just out of habit, I actually did the closure the same as on a fella, now that I look at it. Let me see here. Yeah, I did it that way. Too many fellas pants that I've done. But in any event, here are the 3 finished looks. So let's back up a little bit here. And so we have the one we did in the other video. Here we have the hoodie with the little heart pockets. We have the little shorts and the leggings. So that's the one outfit. Then we have the little button up top, which I will link how to sew this particular blouse in the video description, because it's the same exact blouse. The only change is that I did not put darts in the front of the blouse. On the skirt, I did sew the pieces exactly as they are in the pattern, and it does fit on this doll. It's a little snug on this doll because of the doll stand, because it's a saddle style. But this turned out pretty narrow. It will fit the island doll Ada that it's on right now. And that doll, oh, sorry about that light bulb there, is kind of an average size for a 3rd scale BJD. This doll is a Fairyland Nanyuri head on a resin sole 60 centimeter me body. Now this body is very, 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 very thin. So the skirt works on her as well. But I did find, because the skirt is it's narrow and it doesn't have a lot of flare, so it ended up being like it fit around the hips, but then the waist was kind of big. So I did put some 1/4 inch elastic in the waistband just to help kind of cinch it up so it wouldn't go straight up and then just have a big gap around the waist. What I would recommend is either cut the additional panels for that part of the skirt, or make them flare out at more of an A-line for the top of the skirt. Then the ruffle would be cut according to the measurement of the hemline of this piece, and then of this one you would cut according to the measurement of the hemline of this piece. And the calculations that I use are on the pattern. So it all starts based on this length of a hemline, and then you take that length and add a half to it, and then for this one you measure this length, add a half to it, so that you can have more ruffle at each layer. So that skirt ended up being a lot more slim. Because of what the length ended up being, and as slim as it is, you could even really tighten up this waist with a little bit more, well, not more elastic, but more tightness with smaller elastic, and fit this on an MSD size doll. So that's another option for that pattern piece. So in the event, there is the Frosty outfit combination of pieces, and then of course the little white sparkly pants, which I love this fabric. I love that it's sparkly. So then there's the extra pair of pants that go with it. So there is the first selection for our theme park bounding, all complete. And next we will go ahead and start working on the Snow White sets, which would be with the red, blue, yellow, and black. And we'll grab our bag here. And then it will have the apple fabric, some black, like just an accent color. We've got some black with polka dots. We've got some of the bright blue. So all the pieces for the Snow White character are cut out as well. And that's what we'll go ahead and do on our next video. So until then, thanks for coming along. Happy sewing, and I'll see you next time.